So here's the 125, moving on to the 150. 150 is a cosmetic ripoff of the Honda from about 10 years earlier. And then the original was the 50cc two-stroke. It's my first Mini GP track bike. Good afternoon from May. I'm out here working on bikes today and had a lot of stuff out of the garage and thought, let's make a video about Mini GP bikes and what's available if you're interested in racing. These are the bikes I have that are compatible with the GP class in Mini GP where I live. I'm going to start with my first bike. This is the first mini bike I had. This is a Honda NSR50. It's a little guy. It is from 2004. And it was introduced by American Honda. This bike's been made for 30 years at this point. But it was introduced to replace the YSR50 class. The big difference with this one is it has a radiator, so it is liquid cooled. Unlike the YSR series of bikes that were air cooled. So at that point, 2004, YSRs were falling apart and just didn't exist anymore. You can't race if you don't have bikes to race. Anyway, this bike I got used in about 2018, so about 7 years ago. I found it on Craigslist in New Hampshire. I live in Houston, Texas. And I had this one shipped out here because I wanted to start riding on go-kart tracks. I wanted more seat time. Anyway, this bike is pretty much stock. I have obviously done my own graphics with vinyl on the white bodywork. And replaced some levers over the years, but it's largely stock. One change I did make was the foot peg brackets. The stock ones mount to these tabs on the frame and they're rather weak. If you crash, the foot pegs obviously get bent into the swing arm, which is bad for the swing arm, especially since you can't really get replacement parts for this bike. So I got these from Japan and they incorporate the swing arm mount and these to reinforce, because this whole plate is going across here. Instead of bending here, it has the 3 points here, making it a little stronger. So I did that for very practical purposes. The other reason was I added a linkage so I can run GP shift. The stock one is just straight off the pivot shaft. So that's it for mods. Doesn't really need any others, except for the front brake rotor. These things screech and make a lot of noise. Stock pads, you can lift the rear wheel off the ground, not a problem, but it was screeching. Can't get parts, so I bought an aftermarket rotor from Japan, had it shipped over. Otherwise, the brake still screeches, makes as much noise before, no difference. It is a floating rotor, so it has the bobbins. Not really any benefit by doing that, but what's done is done. Other mod for this bike is handlebars. These are Woodcraft. They are adjustable, replaceable bars. So when you crash and bend a bar, you can remove the silver part, replace the bar, and get back on track. The stock bars are single piece steel units, but if they bend, you're out of luck. So I went ahead and just replaced those. I do have another reason for having done that though. The bodywork on here is made by AirTech, which is no longer in business. Gustav Racing, I think in Florida, bought the molds and can make new body panels. So this is something that I frequently have to deal with, is replacing bodywork. Crashes happen. It's a stock pipe. That's it. It's using stock tire sizes. It did put a hugger fender in here. It keeps crap out of the shock. So it's kind of for cleanliness and maintainability. I did have a suspension shop change the fork spring for my body weight. I am not a 10-year-old child, so that was done as well. But it's a stock shop from Honda. Otherwise, it is adjustable for compression and rebound and preload. So it is adjustable. The forks are preload adjustable and you can change the damping with oil changes. Last piece, Lap timer, gotta have that. There's no point in riding if you're not collecting data and figuring out what you're not doing very well. So that snaps in up here with magnetic mounts, and that's how I assess my riding. So that's the YSR50, and there's still classes for riding this one in. But in 2006, it was replaced with this. In 2006, they took the same motor, the same frame and overall bike, and they put a different motor in. This is a 4-stroke XR100 motor. Essentially, the bike is the same. The suspension, fully adjustable. The fork, the fairing was changed. The gas tank is largely the same, which is nice. Same between the bikes. And then they put 6-spoke wheels on instead of 3-spoke, but the brakes are the same. Largely, there's not a whole lot of difference other than the engine. So in 2006, they made that change. These bikes were not sold in this country, so your chances of finding one to go race are next to impossible. Watch the used listings, that's where you'll find them. They're still eligible, but they're just really hard to find. The world's moved on. So, these are race bikes. They are not street bikes. They do not have batteries. They do not have turn signals, headlights, none of that. You don't need that to race. What they are made for, obviously, is racing. So let me show you inside the bike. I'm going to pull the fairing off real quick, and we'll take a look inside the NSF. The way the NSF mounts is very simple. You pull out R-clips, and the fairing literally lifts off the bike. You can get access to do maintenance chores very easily as a result. This is a dirt bike motor. This is an XR100 motor. Literally, mine is from a dirt bike because the original engine, which I have, has some sort of problem with it. So I literally just bolted in a salvaged motor into this bike. It bolted right up, mounted right up, no changes whatsoever required. It's very basic. Other modification I made was to cut out the tail section here so that I can take the tank off without having to remove the tail section. It just lifts straight out of that. The tail section on here has been modified. This is from a different bike because my legs are long, so I put a longer tail section on it to make room for my big long legs. Otherwise, the stock bike has a very short tail section, and it's not very comfortable. You're literally crammed right up against the tank, and it's really hard to move your body around. So that is the other modification I made to this one. I put a hugger on the back to keep dirt out of the shock. Take a look in there. Similar sort of setup with compression. Rebound is on the bottom of the shock, and preload. So very basic design. The gearing is very different from the NSR. This is a very tiny sprocket by comparison, but it's a dirt bike motor, and internally it is geared differently. I did put the same rear sets on here for the same reason, to beef these up in case of a crash. Again, it's very close to the swing arm. If these bend in, which they will, it'll hit the swing arm. So beef those up. That was the entire purpose for that, is to make it hopefully last longer. It would suck to crash and ruin a bike that you can't replace. Suspension wise, same. It's the same fork as the other bike. The front disc, again, identical calipers, no difference. The disc looks different from the stock NSR. That floating rotor I have, I can put one of them on here as well, but this brake works just fine. It's just very noisy and screechy. Maybe I'll post a link to that in a race, you can hear it. This is an example of a MINIGP bike from about 2016. This is a Kayo Mini GP bike. It's about 10 years old at this point and has had a few owners, including myself. This one is a different animal. The fairing is the same as my Honda NSF over there. There are some subtle differences. The Honda has some cutouts right below the windscreen right here on each side. Subtle differences. They're identical dimensionally. How they mount to the subframe, same way, 2 pins there, 2 back here, and it just lifts off, so it's very easy maintenance. This bike is older. Oh, I should point out the gas tank. Kayos simply have a plastic cover, and it's actually a plastic gas tank. Again, I have rigged it up the same way as on my Honda NSF, so that I have a cutout in the tail section, so I can lift it out without having to remove the tail section just to get access to remove the tank. Pretty simple. I typically run it in this configuration. That serves no purpose. Anyway, it makes my bike all black. Further modifications here. Foot pegs, I replaced the stock ones. It allows me to get my body position a little more comfortable. We do endurance race this bike, so it'll go out on track for 4 hours at a time. Important change here is you will notice this says Yamaha. I did a motor swap on this one. The 10-year-old Kayo motor. It is not identical to a Yamaha TTR125 motor, but it uses the same engine mounts. So I did swap this motor out because I needed something else to use. The other modification back here is the wheels. These are 5-spoke wheels instead of 6. They are about a 1/2 inch narrower. Why did I do that? Because the tire size is the same. The narrower rims fit slick tires better. It's a real pain in the ass to change the tires on the wider, newer wheels. Those are the 6-spoke. Getting the bead seated is really difficult. So anyway, we went with the narrower wheels on the front, and it's much easier to change tires, honestly. So performance-wise, the wheels are also a little bit lighter, one less spoke. Not that it makes a bit of difference on a bike that only goes 50 miles an hour. Anyway, this one also has another change. It has a much larger front rotor with an unfortunately sized caliper. This is what's available to make fit. Honestly, I don't like that caliper. It is way too heavy. It's a waste of weight, and you don't need all that power, and the brake pads don't last very long. Yada yada yada. Anyway, new brake line, custom routed. The other change is the master cylinder here at the front. It's a radial mount. It doesn't matter, it doesn't make a difference whether it's radial or conventional. The important thing is this is a 16mm piston instead of a 14mm piston. That does matter. The reason is the lever travel is much reduced. When I ride, I want to apply brake pressure, not brake travel to get the stopping power. Personal preference, I can go just as fast on the original brake as I can on this one. Moving to the back of the bike, this took more effort. The shock is fully adjustable. We have our compression adjuster here. There is a rebound adjuster at the bottom of the shock, and then it's preload adjustable. This shock is from a Honda NSF100 obtained from Japan. Stock shock on these has reliability problems, and I just had to throw out my original one. The hydraulic line was starting to burst, which is bad. So I just went with this shock because of price. It does fit. It's slightly shorter than the stock shock, so I had to drop the fork and the triple clamps to get the chassis balanced front to rear, so I don't have as much ground clearance because it's shorter. I've adapted to it. That's all I can say about that. This bike also has the same or a similar front brake upgrade. When you get these bikes, the brake rotors stock are warped. It took a couple years to figure out why the front brake lever would pulse when you rode it around track, made it really difficult to ride. Anyway, this one was my attempt to put a bigger disc on, hopefully one that's flat, not warped. And I had to make my own brake mount. So the one that's on the other bike was a bolt-on kit. This one was a do-it-myself. You can see I had to get a bracket, I had to custom grind this. I'm not a big fan, I like easy. This is not easy, but it works, it's rideable. Foot pegs, these are adjustable. Again, performance, if you're not comfortable on the bike, your body doesn't work right, you can't ride your best. Screw engine mods, screw weight mods, it doesn't matter if your body doesn't work right. So, custom foot pegs. Also, these pegs, I'm using generic ones, so when I crash and break something, I buy generic pegs, put them back on. Otherwise, this bike has another mod. That's the gas tank. I'd mentioned on that bike that it has a plastic gas tank. Here's the problem with a plastic gas tank. Listen. Did you hear the air leaking out of it when I pressed on the top of the gas tank? Well, when the bike falls over, it leaks gas everywhere because it doesn't seal solidly. Irritates the crap out of me. I have not been able to fix this flaw in the design, other than a different gas tank. So this is a metal tank from Honda, which I took it off that bike and put it on this bike to solve that problem. Downside, this gas tank is about 2 gallons. This one is, I think, about 1 1/3. So this one is much smaller. It's okay, you just put gas in it more frequently. That bike we run in endurance races, we need fuel capacity, so I'm still trying to fix that. This one, for a 6-lap, 8-lap sprint race, doesn't matter, it'll work just fine, so I'm happy to have that one. The reason is I bought a new gas tank from Japan for this one. That one's dented. This one's not. This one's brand new from Honda. Why did I buy it? Well, a Kayo gas tank, which I'm missing for that bike, is about $260. The metal one from Honda is about $400. I thought the extra cost was worth it. So I went with a new metal tank for this one so that that one can also get a metal tank. Comments for the Honda. The other thing I was going to say about this bike is it was sold by American Honda in 2006, but you have not been able to get parts in a very long time. They only brought 50 of them into the United States. That's why. However, they have sold this bike in the rest of the world for the past 15 years. This isn't a rare bike. Yes, it's rare in the United States, but it's not in the rest of the world. So you can purchase parts for a 2018, 2022, whatever model bike if you have a connection to get parts from Japan. Well, we have something called the internet. So if I have my part number, I can order parts from Japan. The good news is the exchange rate isn't bad, and $400 for a gas tank. I mean, I can't buy a gas tank for my Suzuki SV650 for that kind of money. These are little bikes. There's not much to them. Cost-wise, I mean, this is why I don't ride big bikes anymore. This is just too cheap. My last comment, if you choose to go this road and you want to ride MINIGP bikes, is my friend Claudio and myself bought our bikes at the same time. Literally had them shipped on the same crate to my house. Took me about 2.5 years to get mine straightened out of the crate. Never worked right. Front brake was warped. It took forever to figure out that's what was wrong. My carburetor was really hard to adjust. It wasn't right out of the crate, and I'm not a mechanical genius. Figuring it out is very difficult. But with perseverance, managed to get there. The tachometer on the bike is garbage stock. The lever waggles around, the needle that is. So I found my own electric tach. I had to come up with my own wiring for that. That was something that had to be solved. This bike as well does have the radial mount master cylinder with a 16 millimeter diameter piston. This lever barely has to move. You feel the pressure. You don't have to engage and have it move very much. I like that feel on any of the bikes I have. So that's another modification, but it's not required. Adjustable levers. These are just kind of a no-brainer. And then the bodywork. I have been through 3 or 4 tail sections, 1 or 2 uppers. You can still get these from the distributor in the United States, and good news, same bodywork fits on my Honda, so I have a source for the Honda as well. Otherwise, that's largely it, and these are still eligible for racing. This is a 150. It's not eligible in the same classes as the 125, but well, I have 2 bikes. I can run other classes if I want to.